I just hear the Old Spice tune. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order this Millburn Elementary School the property tax levy presentation. So we're gonna start with the legislation.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with you.
We have a roll call, please.
Mr. Black? Present. Mr. Coleman?
Present.
Mr. Guzek?
Present.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Present.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Federici?
Present.
Ms. Roberts?
And we will start with the presentation of the property tax levy.
Can you please click on, the tax levy resolution, second page, please? Okay, so back in November, we went through the property tax levy presentation, and through a number of questions. Throughout the last couple of weeks, I had a number of questions from primarily a board member. What I did was go back to that presentation and add all of the Q&As to that document. It's posted out on the website. Essentially, though, what we're looking for today is approval of the 2022 property tax levy, which we paid out in the 23 year for the 23-24 school year. The amounts we are asking for broken out by fund on the certificate of tax levy. And today we are holding a truth in taxation hearing because we're asking for more than 5% of what we levied last year. So whenever we do that, we have to hold an additional hearing, which is what we're doing today. So the reason for that is because, as we all know, as we're going to the store these days, we're all experiencing high inflation. There's a lot of knowns that we consider when we're working on the tax levy. So things like pre-negotiated salaries, increases to healthcare costs. So this past year, if you recall, we had a healthcare cost to just our PPO plan of over 11%. It's anticipated for next year that it will be again between 10 and 15%, which is incredibly high. Dollars wise, that's over $250,000. So as we experience these increases year to year, what we're doing when we're creating a levy is anticipating all of these known and expected costs and baking that into what our ask is. So the request for the tax levy for this year is $12,826,479. And that is not including our bond payment, which we don't believe is on this certificate. But if you scroll down, there's a number of resolutions that come along with the tax levy. So what is displayed here are all of the different resolutions that are signed or to be signed when submitting the tax levy to the county. Our bond payment for the upcoming year is $5,226,750. So between those, the amount up at the top and the 5.2 million for the bond payment for the middle school, that would be the total amount of the tax levy for the 22 year. I don't know Dr. Lind, if you want to jump into the whole presentation again, or just to the page in the presentation that shows the breakout similar to the certificate. It shows the breakout by fund. Page 9.
Page 9, is that?
I believe so. One more page. So right there, so those are the numbers that are baked into the certificate of tax levy. So we're asking for approval on.
The line item for transportation, what is being captured with that? Is that, also speaking of, new leases or, new buses with new leases or something? So how is that being captured with this
$40,000. I'm not sure I fully understand your question, but what, so I started working on the transportation,
Right.
lease extension back in September, knowing that we were going to see an increase to transport, no matter what option we did for transportation. So this year I increased oh, it's perfect. I increased the transportation request about $199,000 to account for any anticipated increased expenditure with the new leases.
that was the question.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
So, just as a reminder, the wage we balloon levy, it's called, so we're asking for a percent or two above what we overall, what we will be able to capture by the PTEL tax cap of 5% in this county, so we're asking for 7.68%, I believe. What that allows us to do then in the spring, as we get more information about this year's budget and get to plug in more numbers and have a better anticipation of what we're gonna spend next year, if we need to adjust any of these individual funds, we have room to adjust them next year. So that's why we overall ask for a little bit to give us a little bit of flexibility in the spring. If we need to put more into transportation than we anticipated, we can put more into transportation, or if we put more into the ed fund or wherever it needs to be.
And Carly, can you explain the 178% increase for IMRF?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So, yep, so, Social Security and IMRF, those two rows there are Fund 50, so they're in the same fund. We basically have to stay pretty consistent with what we levy year to year. So last year, the total amount was right around $600,000. It just was broken out differently. So, I think that I don't have last year's presentation. You probably pull it up, but what we want to do is keep the amount within Social Security and the amount in IMRF within these funds. So broken out, consistent, and so putting the 320 and the 300, so basically almost splitting it 50-50 allowed me to do that.
So while it looks like a huge increase, if you look at the two totals, the negative 210 and 1,185, they're almost offsetting the fact that.
Exactly.
they represent
It just-
an increase. although it looks that way.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
I want to point out too that when it says no cap under the state tax cap, that's the state tax cap, so there's two different types of caps that limit how much we can levy in each fund. That means that the state's not putting any limitation on, however, because we live in a P-TEL county, that's a property tax extension limitation. We have a cap on the overall that we can levy from 1 year to the next.
And some of this increase is represented by new property that came on the books too.
What did it increase? So if we. Are you asking, Sean, if that's what under the percent increase column?
Yeah, so basically what I'm asking for, almost stating if memory is correct, there have been new properties that have come onto the books. So some of that increase is represented by simply having new properties. And the overall balance of the total properties has increased, so that can represent some of the increase in the levy.
So that would be that because we're limited to 5%, and we're anticipating we're gonna get 6.05%. That 1.05% increase is due to this number right here.
Right.
So this is the amount that's increased here. If we owned a house last year and owned a house next year, all things being equal in the district, if all our houses stayed the same, we would all go up 5%.
Right.
Any more questions? We have a request for presenters and
For the next meeting.
for the next meeting.
Unless you could ask if anybody has came to speak on the web.
Okay. So if that is all, we will adjourn, make a motion to adjourn from this property tax levy presentation. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Vote. All right. Thank you very much. Moving right on to our regular Board of Education meeting. Do we have another roll call?
Ms. Ball,
Present.
Mr. Coleman,
Present.
Mr. Guziak,
Present.
Mr. Lorenzen,
Present.
Mr. Murphy,
Present.
Mr. Federini,
Present.
Ms. Roberts. Present.
Thank you. I think we did the pledge. We don't have to do that one more time. But now, if Carol would like to speak to the board.
I'm Carol McGill, and I'm president of the Millburn Federation of Teachers. I'm just gonna read because I do best. As I've gotten older, I find myself repeating many of my mom's sayings. One of those is, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I was disheartened when I listened to the last Board of Education meeting, specifically the 23-minute discussion about the calendar. Referring to November, a board member said, quote, "Kids learned nothing." Another board member said in regards to November and December, not in school at all in November or December. One board member said, "I'd like to be able to walk into my boss's office and request a week off." The perception is that these were flippant, offhanded comments, and our staff heard these comments and they were hurt and they were upset. Dr. Lind has often reminded our staff that we have to consider perspective. When talking to parents and students, we all have our perspective, and that's our reality. My perspective about the discussion on the school calendar last month is that I felt disrespect towards the staff. I felt it was inferred that teachers are looking for an easy schedule and that we put ourselves before the needs of our students. When you have your discussions, I wonder if perhaps you forget that you are in a public setting. You are talking about your employees, people that come to work every day wanting to help your children become the very best versions of themselves. Our staff spends hours beyond their workday making sure that our students get the best instruction that we are able to give. We want to know that the board is in our corner. Another quote was, kids need to be the focus, as though they're not. Yes, we moved conferences from the week of Thanksgiving because many families chose to use that week as a vacation and didn't attend what we consider to be very important student parent conferences. I guess I have a couple of questions. Why change the calendar now? Why is this suddenly on the board's front burner? The Board of Education has never really spent a lot of time discussing the calendar in the past, because I've been at the meetings. At a time when teachers are feeling undervalued already, why would you just dismiss what the staff has expressed as important? Trust your teachers. Trust that they have your students' best interests at heart. If 100% of the staff surveyed said that they felt that that was needed that week, trust that there was a good reason. I'm proud of being a Millburn teacher, to work among some of the best educators in Lake County, and to work for some of the best kids. Thank you.
All right, so Carol's the only one who checked the part where if you wanted to speak, just want to make sure you all understood. You, sure, please, state your name.
Anne Marie Mayer. So I'm agreeing with everything that Carol was saying, and one of the things that got me is that it was stressed that the decision needs to be made in the best interest of the students, not what teachers want. What we do every single day is in the best interest of your children and the students in our school. It's hurtful. November is a long month, or is a tough month. Most classrooms prepare for 20 conferences. I personally prepared for 44. And the person who replaces me next year will be doing the same thing. And it's not just conferences, it's report cards are due in November as well. New standards-based grading that we have all worked so many hours on getting this done and putting comments appropriately in report cards, and all of the discussion that was said last time at the meeting is over 2 days. 2 days on the calendar. People need that. We need to be able to enjoy Thanksgiving. That's something we're supposed to be thankful for. And after having a week off and having a discussion with my students in the classroom, they were so excited that they were able to spend time with family that they don't normally get to see, whether they traveled there or their family traveled here. They got to play with their friends. It was beneficial for the students. It was beneficial for us. The kids have come back refreshed, the teachers have, and they're working hard right now. I'm not sure that would be the case if they had a few days off. We don't have the privilege of planning our vacations. We get told, well, you've got all summer. Well, most of us don't. So that week is really helpful. And the reference was, well, in my business, I couldn't walk up to my boss and say, I want the week of Thanksgiving off. Well, before I was a teacher, I was in business for 18 years, and I can't tell you how many times I took 3 days of vacation that week, so I had a whole week. It's possible. It depends on how you want to utilize your time. I did a comparison of what the Lake's potential calendar is and 2 of our calendars. And in the month of November, it's 15.5 days that we're going to school. In December, it's 16. In March, it's 16. In January, it's 17. We're not talking about a lot of time here. Something to think about.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Does anyone have any additions or non-action? Approval of the adoption of the fiscal 2022 property tax levy. We've had our discussion. If you want to last minute, otherwise, if we can have a motion.
I make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2020 property tax levy as presented.
Okay. We have a roll call.
Ms. Walsh,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Mr. Guzziak,
Pass.
Mr. Lorenzen,
No.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Federine,
Yes.
Ms. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Guzziak,
I'm sorry, what was that last vote?
yes.
No.
The motion passed.
Approval of the 2023-24 school year.
Okay, so we had a presentation at our last meeting and had some extensive discussion on calendars. And they sent out a board's request, some additional options, just showing what some possibilities were. Are there any questions or any proposals on how we should move?
Yes, can you bring up map 3?
Yes. And before we start, we do not have to approve the calendar tonight. There's no levy we did. That had to be approved tonight or we'd have to meet until we got it done. The calendar, in the past, we have waited till January to do it. To approve it. That's not unusual. But parents like to have that ahead of time for planning vacations for the following year. They need to know, especially winter break and spring break, which weeks they're falling. So I always get requests around this time of the year from parents asking, hey, when are we gonna know when our winter break and spring break is, so we can reserve our vacation home and make plans. That was for number 3.
Can you go to March, please?
Yep.
Can you explain the 25th and 26th? Did you just not color those in, or were those cut out? Or,
I think that late start at the 30th.
This is if we start after Labor Day
Right.
and before Memorial Day, what it would look like.
okay,
And so you'd have to cut spring break for 3 days and you'd have to cut winter break to 1 week and 2 days. Thanksgiving. Because you have to take up all the other days to get 180 days in between that is what you got.
what if we move the 2 conference days in November to the,
You can move them wherever they want, it won't matter because those days count as student attendance.
but they're not actually here, are they?
But families go
Thursday.
away for March, you wouldn't have
Right.
anyone there for conferences.
Okay, that's what I wanted to check.
Oh, I see.
I'll say I really appreciate the teachers sharing how they're feeling. And I especially look for the lack of trust that we communicated, the lack of trust, and that definitely, I don't think reflects how we're feeling. I do think that the break may have been very beneficial. You know, I think probably it was, some students probably would do better with more consistency in a month. That's a lot of school to miss in 1 month. So yes, some may benefit. Some probably did struggle. You know, we did kind of have the perfect storm in November last year with the election. Having that 5-day weekend. And I don't think that we're trying to not be in somebody's corner by questioning the calendar. I think there are just some thoughts about families that have a hard time taking off all those days. I do understand that some people can take off the full week in November and they work in a business where they can. Some people don't. especially, you know, people that are service workers. So I think we were just trying to talk about, and I think I probably was one who was a little flippant. This board knows I was having some issues, but you're right, we're in a public forum, and so I should have been more tactful and thoughtful in what I said, so I do apologize for that. I do know that our role as the board is not to advocate for our own children. Just if my child had a really hard time in November, it doesn't mean that that's the decision that the board should make. You need to look at what the teachers are saying, what the students are saying, so I do apologize for those words. In the end, I think November's a rough month. I won't ever step on teachers' toes. And so I'm willing to approve the calendar as the teachers have voted. I still feel like it's a lot, but I'm not a teacher, so. So yeah,
One of the concerns that comes up and has come up very recently is the difference between, for instance, Lake's high school schedule for that week and the Millburn schedule. And there are certainly families that have kids that are in high school and kids that are also at Millburn. And when the kids that are in Lakes are in school, then parents would need to have coverage for the young kids. And that would mean that a parent would need to take off for that. And that was one of the issues that was brought to my attention. So that's where the difference comes in for those days. The older kids potentially would be able to take care of the younger ones. And that's what was brought up.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do we know the calendars of the high schools that we feed into and the schools around us? Or if we do this now, would we be the first ones out of the gate?
The others aren't official yet, because their boards haven't voted on them yet, but I do know their probable likely calendars, yes, 99% sure.
Would they wouldn't be voting on them tonight, would they? So.
But I
it's-
can tell you they're not gonna change.
Okay. But could we get them for January and look them over and compare ours to?
Yes, what would you like to know?
I would like to know the calendars of
Lakes, Grays, and Gurney.
Lakes,
Yeah.
Grays, and
Right.
Gurney, and then what are the surrounding, especially 41?
41 will match ours. And they will have conferences on November 20th and 21st. Their winter break and spring break is exactly the same, and their start date is pretty close. Graves Lake
So
High
it-
School starts on the 10th and 11th. Lake starts on the 15th with kids.
No.
so option
Warren
6,
starts on the 15th with kids.
is option 6 not recommended because the full week of November is better for kids to have off and like unwind a little bit?
For November,
Can we see
for
options?
this one,
No, option 6. Or draft 6. But that gets us a full spring break, it gives. But I mean, and the one thing it doesn't do is give the full week of Thanksgiving.
Right.
So the goals for having a full week of Thanksgiving would be beneficial for students to be able to socialize with each other. Having time to unwind, and then for those who are able to travel, they're able to take trips.
And a reset for the teachers too, having those extra days.
I would contend that having those two days for kids is a disruption anyway, as far as routine and learning.
My struggle with it is that, it doesn't matter, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine.
No, but-
There's not a right or wrong answer on
Well,
this.
I mean, I understand, you can't say that students don't learn, right? So the 21st and the 20th, you can't say are wasted days, that they're not gonna come to school and learn.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, what do you mean there is disruption?
Yeah.
Can you clarify that?
So what we try to do is get as many 5-day segments as possible, right? Which is why in the past we have moved, for example, in October, instead of doing our Institute Day on Friday here, and we'll have 2 4-day weeks, we'll do it here and have a 5-day week and a 3-day week. So you're disrupting 1 week's routine.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
That's why we've done that on a Tuesday. I'm not a particular personal fan of the Tuesday, but that's why we've done it that way,
So
so,
the goal is to cluster to preserve the 5.
yes.
Yes.
Again, it's not a right or wrong answer, it's some,
So those 2 days then, where are they going? The 20th and 21st?
the 28th and 29th of May. Or not 29th and 30th of May.
So by not having those 2 days, they end school earlier?
Yes.
So it's not really creating another short week. But then it doesn't give the teachers the week break that they need.
The other thing that was brought up to me today by a teacher, and here's where every family has a different scenario. So Lakeville School District and Antioch School District don't have school at the elementary school. So if I'm a teacher and working in either one of, working here and living, my kids on top. Again, that's a me issue that, I would have to take care of. So no matter what we do, there's going to be some families who are impacted one way.
You bring up 6 again. Oh, this is 6.
This is 6.
This is 6.
So I guess
No.
yeah,
This is the one, Memorial Day to Labor Day. Oh, that's 3. Sorry, 3.
but that cuts out, spring break. You can't cut out spring break.
No, but hear me out. Okay. So. We scroll down a bit. So we need 2 days for spring break. So what if we add those? Because the teachers are gonna have to come the last week of August no matter what. So what if we add 2 days at the end of, or what's that, September 1st and August 31st? And start then, because normally we have 2 days and then we go on a break. And then they come for 4 and then they come for 5. What if we add the 1st and 31st? And then we add those 2 days for spring break and we have a full week of spring break.
But the teachers don't? I don't understand what you're saying.
No,
That have the kids start earlier?
have the kids start on the 1st and the 31st. And the teachers spend
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
the start of that last week of August prepping their classrooms. And then we have a full week.
can we find out, from the teachers if there was any interest whatsoever in, the one schedule that starts after, Memorial Day?
Was that part of the survey?
Maybe we'll have to go back to the beginning. Explain what I've done this year. And other years. So this starts out with a broad survey. Last year it was a thought exchange. And from the thought exchange, we narrowed it down and then went to a smaller group, committee group, into different ideas, and then you come up with a couple of different options, then survey again to say, okay, here's generally where most people land. Let's go from here to here, because you can imagine that we have 7 board members having opinions. We have 214 staff members, that's a lot of opinions. And all of the opinions that the board has have been represented by at least a staff. I'm pretty sure. So everybody has their idea of what the count is. So what I did is start broad, get ideas, met with staff, had open forum, say, come and give your counter ideas. Here's all kinds of ideas that you can have. What are some of, what do you have? And you narrow it down and you narrow it down and narrow it down, and then the survey results that you guys saw was the result of narrowing it down to a point. And then you go from, you saw this, the survey, that was at the end to get down to that. So to go back and open it up again. Yeah, but I don't know what's gonna change.
No, that wasn't the reason, the question. I was trying to see if it's a non-starter, then take it off of this list.
Yeah, that's a.
Okay, so if it's a non-starter, then there's, okay, all right. So there were 6 and that was 5.
I don't, forgive me, because I've been all over the place this year, but I don't remember, did you ever inquire to, parents, as it relates to the calendar and how it changed? I know that the question was raised by why are we suddenly talking about calendar? The 2 years notwithstanding that we dealt with COVID, this is like, what, the first couple of years that we've had the entire week of November of Thanksgiving off, and then moving the conference days. So I think that that's probably why there's a lot more discussion about it, because it is a significant change for families. And it's not to say that we don't respect the teachers, what you all are doing, or the time and effort that you put into the kids, we absolutely do, but we do also have to consider what the parents are able to do for their children as well. Like, so I think that is why it's being discussed, and I do think that it's important, and I do think that it needs to be discussed. It's not due to a lack of respect or, us wanting our own specific, ideals, but this is a new change, and it's a huge change for a lot of families, and it can put a lot of strain on them. So.
Yeah, I agree, Kathy. It's those, if we're just talking about those 2 days, I understand it.
Yeah, like the 2 days, but then also the 2 days,
Right.
because it's like,
But
I understand why they were moved, but then it was like an added 2 days, so it's not really like just 2 days, it's almost a full week that we have to that families are now
yeah,
jumping around as far as.
part of that's because this is the election new holiday that we have to work around and squeeze in, and so how do you manage all that? So that's, I think, the perfect storm this year, and I understand, that won't be next year, it'll be different. Part of the reason why the consideration was to take this full week off at Thanksgiving was to, for families, because, and this impacts teachers directly, when we moved from not having conferences during Thanksgiving week, we just had school Monday, Tuesday, and then we had Wednesday. And then we decided to put conferences in and have the half day. And then that worked well for a year or two, and then families started to get into a different rhythm and take that full year, not everything, of course, but a significant amount. So if I've got, if I'm a teacher trying to set up my conference schedule, I want to meet with my families. And who's gonna say no to our families, because they're awesome and we love our families and we really value relationship. Over, that's number one. So which teacher is gonna say no to meeting with that family? Which means they have to schedule an appointment outside. So when it got to be 4 or 5 kids in a classroom doing that, that's significant.
Yeah, and I totally understand the reason
Yeah.
for it. I do.
Right,
But I'm,
and I understand the reason why putting strain on families too, so
yeah,
what can we do to
so was,
help that a little bit?
was anything like ever, I don't know, put out and like say, like express, like this is what's going on, this is why we did this is why we did this. How do you guys feel about it?
But I mean, I understand moving the conferences, that doesn't mean you have to have the whole week off for Thanksgiving, just because you move that. I mean, it's that. I think as a parent, it's just hard to see so much time off in 1 month, especially when you know the very next month, there's gonna be so much time off. That doesn't mean perception equals reality. And so that's where we will have to defer to our educators. But I think that's the impulse of like feeling like, boy, my kid's never in school.
Sorry, just gonna swing on back over. So with, since conferences, like when they were in Thanksgiving week and families would just take the whole week off, if they don't have those days off.
If we had full days of school that week?
No,
You mean on Monday and Tuesday?
Yeah, like. Was that a thing where they would just blow off those 2 days of school and not show up? Or, 'cause I mean, that was a thing for a while.
It was not to the same extent that it was when we had 2 half-day conferences, but yes, families would still take that with them. Especially because other school districts around us have those 2 weeks.
And that brings us to my.
No, we have 1 week off, 2 days. I'm sorry, they have that week off. I said 2 weeks.
Oh. And then I actually, I'm gonna branch right off into somewhere completely different, because you started going over the breaks as it relates to the high school. If you went over Wonderline and.
Grays Lake, Warren, and Lakes.
Yeah, but you only went over the breaks for 2. Or you went through one of them?
I only
And then-
started with the start dates. So the August start dates for Grays Lake are, I think the kids start on the 11th. They have teacher institute before that. And for Warren and Lakes, they're the 15th or 16th.
And how did their, like, their holiday breaks for, like,
So next year they will have, Lakes did not have the Wednesday off this year, which I think it, highlighted. They had 3 days. That was a mistake. We won't do that. So they'll have every other school district that I know of has Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Thanksgiving. And they will next year. Antioch 34 and Lakeville 41, the elementary districts have Monday and Tuesday off. Lakeville has conferences on Monday and Tuesday, but they, no kids. Then,
Does Lakeville have that same issue? With,
so is it just,
not good.
so is it just the 2 elementary schools in 24 that took the week off? In November then? Is the full week off?
In our,
Full cluster.
Only only
Two
elementary
Two
schools,
elementary schools and then
Including-
Millburn 24, so 3 elementary schools and 1 middle school.
but the high schools don't.
the high schools want to get as many days in their first semester as possible, so they'll never take that full week off. High schools are totally different.
Yeah, they have finals.
That's why they started so early in August. So the high schools have changed the calendar to push it back into an early start. We're kind of chasing that a little bit, try and match up. Winter breaks and spring breaks are all exactly the same with all three high schools. And that's what we're try to match that up, and it doesn't always work that way because I think it was last year, the year before, where Warren didn't match up with us. Hard, that was not great.
I'm questioning again, when we use the term break in November. So I look at February and I look at April. And those are day off deserts. I mean, it is just, one week after another. Where when we're looking at up at Thanksgiving. Got 3 months in a row, well, not according to this calendar. This, you're showing the calendar, that's not gonna happen.
Well, you show the other one.
So we have November, December, and January. We have 1 week off in each of those months. But then we look, we go a little bit further down and, okay, you get spring break, there's, 1 day in February, April is just,
It's a
1
grind.
week after another. So, kind of wondering about using the phrase, break. I mean, if we're gonna be a break anywhere, try to have it where we're gonna be in school for, weeks after, week after week. Just a thought. Should we find out if we're going to vote on this today, or we're going to, Mr. President?
I'd like to vote on draft one. I think the staff and the administration worked hard in building. Perhaps they didn't get enough parent input. Needs to be said, but right now, I mean, I hear a lot of people trying to get on the dance floor, so to say, and say, hey, this is better for the children. But that's what we hire our experts for, to make those choices. So, I mean, we can disagree with them, but if you want to call the question and vote on one today, or you can have us table it till next week. Up to you guys.
Are you ready, all of us, or me?
I'm ready to vote.
Well, anyone can call the question or ask the table.
I'll call a question.
So then we have a motion to adopt the draft one, the staff recommended calendar.
I make a motion to adopt the option one draft school calendar for the 23-24 school year.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
We got 3 nays.
It's two of them. Well, it's
Say,
an
I didn't
option.
hear you.
It's an option to do. the roll call.
It is an option to do a roll call.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Roberts? No. Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Goudier?
No.
Mr. Lorenzen?
No.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Federini?
Yes.
The motion passed.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for the discussion.
Bus lease extension. More fun.
More fun.
This would be,
Let's get. Okay, so. Calendar. Switch. Thank you. there. Okay. So buses, Carly and I are recommending, you line out. So,
I have handouts.
ooh, and so, while Carly's handing that out, we'll go back and, just in general terms, discuss the buses. So we are gonna recommend going with new buses. A 4-year lease on new buses. Because, as we did more and more calculations, and did research and investigated what, would happen with depreciation, which I didn't understand the full impact of, getting credit for depreciation would have on our transportation reimbursement from the state. It is significant, and it's significant enough to make it better to start over at least for these new buses for 4 years versus extending our current lease 2 more years. So we're in the 4th year this year of our 4-year lease. The state allows depreciation for 5 years. So we would have 1 more year where we would capture the depreciation amount and get reimbursed for that. But in the 6th year, if we go with a 2-year lease, 2 more years, which would be wise given the bigger picture that we talked about before, and I will talk about that again a little bit. But that 6th year, you do not capture the depreciation on those buses. So the state says, okay, you spend, now buses are over $125,000 for a new bus. You can credit of that value, you can credit $25,000 for 5 years to depreciate that bus out as part of your expenses. The 6th year, you get nothing. So they say the state has devalued it. That doesn't mean the bus doesn't have value. This is just an accounting paperwork reimbursement rule. So therefore, when we included the depreciation in, because we were looking at a 2-year lease, and we wanted a 2-year lease because next year, the current company that we use and the buses that we use will no longer be making those engines. So they're gonna be switching engines, not sometimes wise to get in on the 1st year of a new rollout of new engines. Might be okay, might not. And costs may go up again. And we may not, because of the production change, we may not have access to those buses. Because when we were at the conference, Carly and I met with our bus company and we talked to other people and other companies. There are no buses for next year. If you're going to get new buses, we have to be now, and we'd have to get lucky enough to get enough. So we want to make sure we have buses this year for next year and then for the following year. So we were recommending a 2-year. But when we put in depreciation and figured that all in, and the warranties and the extra maintenance and everything, it makes sense now to go with a 4-year new bus. 5 new buses on a lease for 4 years. Will be the lowest cost. It will be the least risk as far as our ability to provide transportation. Kids and have buses. They have the buses available to us now. If we get in on it, they have inventory for us. There is a downside that is causing other districts to hesitate, which is instead of a 100-gallon tank, they're now 60-gallon tanks.
Oh, of course.
So, which doesn't impact Millburn. It won't cost us any more money. It'll be more of a pain because we'll have to fill them up more, but that part won't impact us other than we'll have to be a little more careful. We can get anywhere we need to go 6 times over, unless we're going to Timberlake or northern Wisconsin or someplace.
Instead of the wheelchair bus.
But
Just down there with the.
So- No, so, okay, so the wheelchair bus that we were quoted on is a diesel bus. And that has additional, regulations when you're working with diesel versus gas. So Matt, who was here at the last board meeting, he believes he has, a potential for 3 gas wheelchair buses to become available in January, in which he said we would get first dibs on. So I would like to table we do have 1 wheelchair bus in this grouping, within this lease extension. But I would like to table the additional wheelchair bus to see if that gas wheelchair bus becomes available. The other thing I started talking to our, head bus driver about was the potential for other wheelchair transportation options. What about a van that has a wheelchair capacity? What I need to better understand from her is what the outlook is for students next year. What those routes would be. So for example, do we have 2 children in a wheelchair bus going to the same, in the same vicinity? Where we would need to put 2 wheelchairs, into a vehicle, or are they separate where we could use the wheelchair bus we have and a van that we have or something like that? So I want to do a little bit more digging on different options. I did check with Midwest to see if they have wheelchair vans. They do not. They only supply buses, but that's something else I would like to look into a little bit further.
That makes sense. That would be a lot more cost effective too.
What was that?
Sorry, it would be more cost effective too, if a van were available, if we're only making smaller amounts of transportation, that would be more cost effective as opposed to having a 2, or like more than 1 wheelchair bus.
As long as we never were in a situation where we would have to have 2 wheelchairs on a bus at one time.
Yeah, that's hard to fit.
Right, it is. But that's what I want to better understand. What have we ever done, what have we done in the past, and even just see if these options are out there. Maybe there's a van that allows for 2 wheelchairs.
Jason, these are the new buses with the new engines, or no, these are still the diesel ones?
no, these are still current gas,
Okay.
but same engine that we currently have.
Same engine.
Basically the same bus that we currently drive.
Okay,
So,
This is
All right.
our guess.
our gas.
so when these are up, the new engines will be on their 3rd year,
And I'd be
Right,
able to.
right. teased out all the bugs, okay.
Okay, you had mentioned diesel, these are not diesel.
No,
buses.
these are
No.
gas.
Right,
These are
yeah,
gas-
that was
okay, so
meant
these
to
are- these are- All
They have gas.
15 are gas buses.
Yes.
So the only difference right now are the smaller fuel tanks, because we still have the the older engine design. This hasn't moved over to Cummins yet,
Right,
Correct.
that's correct.
okay?
The
so that's
other-
another plus.
Right, the other difference I had, our head bus driver look at the specs for these newer buses, and the only thing that she noticed was there's an overhead compartment above the driver that is not on the new buses, but they don't use that compartment, so
Okay,
it's like a cosmetic change, I guess.
and what about all the electronics that we put in them now? If we have
So
cameras,
all those cameras, they will come in and transfer them. That'll cost us,
Okay,
but we'll have to do it eventually.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the same company's gonna do that.
Yeah, there's a company that will come and install. I don't know if it's this company or the third.
Oh, okay, somebody, okay, so that.
Somebody knows that,
Okay, so that'll be taken care of.
but it does cost money.
Oh, yeah,
Is there been an estimate
How
of
much?
those costs? Yeah.
I have no idea.
And if there's any,
I can't remember what the original install was, but I would imagine it'd be similar.
are there any adjusted costs for going with new buses on the maintenance? We've seen less maintenance.
Yeah,
For new
so
buses.
there's less risk. So
Right.
these come with a maintenance plan anyway, and a warranty, so you have to have the warranty, we learned this today. Carly figured this out today. In order to get the maintenance on the new buses, you have to have the warranty in place, so.
So
We'll
the
be
maintenance
paying-
costs less on the new buses compared to the old buses.
So with the new buses, there is the maintenance package is about the same on all of these, but the difference with the new buses is there is a factory warranty for the engine, so there's no cost there. Versus with extending the lease, we would have to get the engine and body and chassis warranties in order to have the maintenance plan. And so what this maintenance plan does is it has, so every week with the maintenance plan for these 20 buses, every week, someone from Midwest Transit comes up and does a diagnostic of all 20 buses just to give them a health check, make sure everything is looking good. It's kind of like preventative maintenance. Twice a year, they go through the buses in great detail to make sure that everything is working appropriately. And so they also within this maintenance package, they come on site and do the oil changes. So we do not have to have our drivers bring the buses to a location for simple oil changes or simple maintenance. So when we take on this maintenance package, it is allowing us to have Midwest Transit come on site and do the majority of the minor repairs. Now, if there was something major, then it would go down to their facilities.
And that saves time, I mean, that saves time for the bus drivers, one, and money too, because we're not.
Right, so like if you had to bring one bus to go get repaired, say at, the bus repair shop in Fox Lake, you would have to have two drivers, so one person driving the bus,
Yeah.
one person following them to bring it back, and that would be outside of their regularly scheduled 4-hour day.
Yeah, understood, yeah.
The drivetrain warranty, is that 1 year or a number of miles or
For the new
for the new
buses.
bus?
For the new buses, it's a 5-year factory warranty, and then the body chassis is just a 12-month warranty.
Okay, so it's pretty much the life of the bus for
Right.
for the drivetrain.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You guys feel comfortable voting on? And I'm gonna recommend you.
C, right?
Yes.
Well, make sure. All this.
All right.
I move to approve for, how do you want me to say this? Option C. I move to approve option C, new 4-year lease for 15 big buses, 1-year lease extension for 5 small buses.
Second. Roll call.
Mr. Federline,
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes,
Mr. Coleman?
Present?
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
The motion passed.
Thank you. And if you want to see details or have any other questions about this, Charlie, and I can send you more information. This is so many variables. Charlie's got the folder down. There's so many variables, it was very hard to get down to where the levers were, so kind of, in order to compare, you put everything being the same except switch one of those variables. And that's how we came to put these numbers. Because that's the only fair way to do an accurate comparable as much as possible. We don't know exactly how much the state is going to refund us in transportation, because that changes every year based on how much money is left in the pot. So I'm anticipating, this just is an FYI, I'm anticipating that in the future, because all of these costs and bus costs are going up. There's going to be less money to spread around. We're going to get less of a percentage of that. It'll get prorated to the term that we use. So they'll say, oh, yeah, well, you can get $500,000 in reimbursement, but we're gonna prorate that down to $400,000, because that's all we have, according to your share. Just as an FYI. Doesn't impact tonight's decision, but when we talk budgeting, it's just a little tip to keep in mind.
In the consent agenda, does anyone have anything they'd like to pull out? If not, can we have a motion on the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda as reported.
Second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Federini,
Yes.
Ms. Roberts.
Yes.
Ms. Ball,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Guziak,
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzen,
Yes.
the motion passed.
We have a FOIA from the County Federation of Teachers. Looks like they're trying to figure out sick loads. School improvement plan presentation.
All right, we have our principals here tonight, and they are ready.
You guys picked a good
Didn't
time.
have enough time to prepare.
Well, thanks for having us tonight. Mr. Walshire and I are going to present a few slides to everybody about the school improvement plan at both buildings. Yeah, but we haven't decided which door we're positioned. Where do we need to be? We're talking about standing and sitting, so you might see a mix of that. But thanks for having us tonight. There's a hidden mystery way that we have delineated the slides throughout the presentation. You figure it out about who's presenting what slides. So the challenge is to see if you can figure out what the secret hidden clue code is on how we've divided this up. We're trying to spend about 15 minutes on this topic with you tonight. So we are going to try and motor through some slides with you and some information. Dr. Lynn, if you can go to the next slide. Thanks. So this is the district goals, the building connections. So that's that feeling of belonging in our school culture. So students belonging, teachers belonging, administration, staff, and parents all kind of feeling like a connection to our schools. And then academic growth, that's just saying, look at where we were before on our academic growth and how would we like to improve and how can we do that? So underneath that, you'll see that there's measurements and how we can gauge progress. And then underneath that, you can see the district strategies that are highlighted by the arrows.
So also, I think I shared this presentation with all of you. There's going to be some detailed slides that we won't go through full, but if you want to go back to reference to, I encourage you to do so. So let's spend a little bit of time about academic growth. This is one of our goals, which we want to make sure you understand growth versus achievement. But you might hear a lot of ELA and math aspects in this presentation, but please note that all of our content areas are supported in this academic goal. It's not just our ELA teachers or math teachers, but all of our content area teachers, special education teachers, everyone who's involved in our district will support these growth goals because they are incorporated into many of their subject areas as well in a lot of their lessons. So just keep that in mind. So talking a little bit about growth, achievement versus growth. So you've probably been used to the classic MAP RIT score. These are the scores that are sent home to parents. This is their magic score, how they scored on NWA. It might be a 189 or a 210. What does that mean? Well, typically we've always compared that score to a certain level, what percentile they are compared nationally to other students at that age range and that grade level. Well, which one's important? Well, achievement versus growth. Well, growth is going to be more of where they started, where they got to. And depending on where they grew, how did they compare to others in that growth? So which one do we look like? Achievement versus growth? Well, the next one. We want to look at both because growth will lead to achievement. You've heard a lot of the things over maybe the last several years that below the 34th percentile in RIT score is below average. And we want to have less kids below average. And we want to push as many kids above to get to the 67th percentile because studies have shown if a student can get to a RIT score in the 67th percentile, they have a higher percentage of scoring above a 22, right? Is it 22, Dr. Lynn?
Yep.
On the ACT.
Index to the 22 on the ACT.
They have a better chance of scoring that. And so, all right, we look at one group of kids, we look at another group of kids, but when you look at growth of a district, you're looking at all the kids. And that's why we want to focus all our attention on growth. You've probably been used to growth charts. When you start looking at height, or when you have kids, you go to the doctor, think of it that way. Depending on how they grew, how do they compare to others at that age? So just think about percentiles in comparison in that growth. So what does that look like for math? So math does give us some indicators on growth. What is considered low growth? What is considered high growth? So if you think of just a quick moment at that chart, you can kind of see where our ranges are at, and we'll be referencing that as we get into a little bit more data that's specific to our district. Just below that chart is an example of a student profile page on NWA. And this is what our educators see every time they look at a NWA score. On the left is their growth. Where did they come from one point of a RIT score to the next? And based on how much they grew, how did they compare to others nationally? So in this case, that student grew enough to be in the 57th percentile, which if you look above, where are we at? That's about average growth. That's right in the average growth range. On the right is their achievement score. Depending on where they scored at that specific time, how do they compare to others at that specific time around the country? But again, we're focusing on growth. So take a look at our district, and we might be missing a number there. The numbers that we're gonna share here are how we scored last year in growth, from fall to spring in the entire district. Up in the top left-hand corner, those numbers represent individual grade levels and how they averaged in their growth score last year. Notice we're on the high end of the 71st percentile to the low end to the 34th percentile. That is representative of math content last year on NWA. On the right side is reading. Again, on the high side, the 64th percentile, and the low end to the 38th percentile. Again, growth from fall to spring. So look at those numbers, see where they fell along to our scale below. Obviously, we have some on the above average growth, we have some on the low average growth. But as a district, those are our growth percentiles last year as a district. Math, 52.75 percentile in growth, reading 50.4 percentile. There's our baseline. Sorry, go ahead.
There's a bigger, like the 34 to 71, what do you call that? There's a math term for that, like the high and the low is more in math and reading. Did that say anything, or is that just the way it is?
That's just kind of where we want to kind of differentiate. Where do we need to kind of look at how grade levels have done versus where we're at as a district?
Yeah,
And which we're going to kind of go into specific strategies, how we can address those individuals in those groups. So if that's our baseline, where do we want to go to?
So then this slide is going to share just like what that could mean as a 5-year academic goal. If we're trying to get to the 67th percentile in growth on our NWA math testing. So I'll go back. So incrementally, just seeing an incremental growth over the next 5 years to get to the 67th percentile over 5 years. So then underneath that, the question is, well, what are we going to do in order to try and achieve this level of growth? So one of the things that our district is doing is the implementation of professional learning communities, PLCs, throughout the districts, so that that'll be in practice that will help our staff target their instruction. Next, so PLCs. So PLCs are asking these 4 questions that are boarded there. Underneath, I want to highlight that teachers are already doing this every day of the week. But through PLCs, the system of professional support is defined and structured and continuously supported with teachers and administration working together. So the questions that we're asking are, what do we want students to know and be able to do? how will we learn, I'm sorry, how will we know if they've learned it? How are we gonna respond to the ones that don't learn? And then how are we gonna extend learning for the ones that are already proficient? There are critical conversations that have to happen during the course of this. And then definitely making sure that everybody is focusing on all of the students and not just my one class and how my one class is doing. So like, it's a cumulative effort.
And up at the top, we put up some of the bold words there, and you'll be seeing some hints of that as we go through the strategies that we're doing at both buildings, learning targets, common assessments, interventions, differentiating. So those are gonna be kind of connected to those 4 main questions that are associated with PLCs. So looking at MES, these will be our strategies that we're looking at. So the big thing that we've been working on at the elementary is the implementation of proficiency scales for ELA and math. For those of you that have seen our newsletters, we've been pushing this information out since the summer. A lot of work was put into our proficiency scales. What are proficiency scales? Those are going to be our learning targets that our teachers have worked very hard to establish. Also working on common formative assessments, which we'll go into what those are, because those are going to be the ways that we understand, are they hitting those learning targets? Because this is the criteria that we've set up for them. So those are going to be the 2 big action steps that we're taking as an entire building. So proficiency scales, for those of you that are not familiar with proficiency scales, sometimes people call them rubrics. These are going to be the tools that our teachers use so that we are consistent with our grading practices across the grade level. For those of you familiar with traditional gradings of A, B's, and C's, what we discovered early on, and some of the members of the audience, they were part of this journey about 5 years ago. We asked ourselves a lot of questions as an elementary of where our grading practice at? How do we understand what we want students to learn? And we did discover that our grading practices were in different areas, even within the same grade level. So we needed to make sure we had consistent expectations for our students. And then we understood that where do we want to teach these throughout the entire year? Because that was also not consistent within the grade level. So that started our journey. With the help of the ROE, our teachers pulled together and we started looking at what standards are going to be our priority. Because there are a lot of Common Core standards out there. Some that are priority, some that are more secondary priority. But we need to establish what do we want to make sure is the heart and soul of our learning within each grade level. And that's what we developed the proficiency scales for us. This is what we want students to learn at different points of the year throughout that school year. So those are proficiency scales and targets, and those are on our website for each grade level within the elementary. Common assessments. These are going to be the assessments that we use to gauge learning throughout the year. We use NWA 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. Those are good kind of pieces of data to see, are they on the right path? The common assessments are going to tell us, are they responding to our instruction in the classroom? And if we have assessments that are the same for each classroom, then we can start comparing. Yes, these students are understanding it, or no, these students are not. And then those grade level teams are having what Jake had talked about, those critical conversations. Well, some students didn't respond to this in your class, but they responded to another class. What worked for you as an educator? How can we start comparing instructional practices so that we're maximizing our instruction within a grade level? So those are the reflections that we have. And as we start looking at our proficiency scales, that drives the creation of assessments because we know what we want students to know throughout the year. Let's devise an assessment so we can gauge that learning. And once we develop that assessment, now let's plan our instruction. How do we want to get them there? How are we going to teach them so they're ready for that assessment? Because that's going to be our learning target. Additional strategies. So although the proficiency scales, our common assessments are the big work that we're doing, we also know that our individual teams are going to be differentiating those strategies this year. So also as a school, we added an after school intervention time for identified at-risk students. Focusing our attention from percent correct to learning targets. So it's not, did you get 90% correct on a test? Well, one great example I just want to share briefly, and this came from one of our PLC professional development opportunities. They compared somebody that got 15 out of 20 on a test, and that person didn't answer 5 questions, just completely left blank. Another student got 15 out of 20, but those 5 questions they got wrong, minor errors. Now, if we did traditional grading, That would be 75% that somebody would put in on a grade book. Now we're really looking at that, that the student who just made minor errors really understood the content and the target versus the one that completely didn't answer those. So those are the mindset shifts that we're really making. And that's where we're kind of moving towards learning, looking at the learning targets versus percentage. And then, of course, looking at data as an entire cohort versus an individual classroom. We have other differentiating ones, and we're not going to go to each individual team, but Tech is looking at how we could be SOPA compliant with all of our apps. Special education, looking at new reading programs and resources within their reading instruction. Interventionists identifying holes within learning with those students that are at risk, working with grade level teams to see what they can do to best support students that are not responding to the core instruction. If we're going to answer that question, if they don't respond, what are we going to do as a team and as a school? And then we have 2 instructional coaches supporting our teachers with that, with their intervention materials and looking at programming aspects within each grade level. And then this is just a collection of, we sat down with our leadership team, we talked about what are some individualized strategies your groups are going to be doing. So I want you to take a moment when you have time, not necessarily right now, but even after the presentation. I highlighted those key terms at the very beginning to answer those 5 PLC questions. And that's what you're going to see in a lot of these strategies within grade levels. Looking at common assessments, looking at learning targets. How are we going to differentiate within the classroom? We have a lot of our teachers that are now looking at data and seeing what did they do last year when it comes to IAR data, when it comes to math data, that maybe we didn't focus enough attention on. And so that's where they're really making some individualized action plans to help those strategies, again, going back to improving student growth at the elementary.
And then some action steps at the middle school for academic growth. Remember, we're tying this back to the goal of academic growth, trying to increase our scores on the NWA and our growth in there from fall to spring. So meeting the growth goals on the map, assessments, developing professional learning communities, and maximizing our resources through scheduling. Those are our 3 target areas of the middle school. And let's take a little bit closer look next. So meeting the growth goal. These are the 4 bullet points that we're going to be able to work on to achieve that. So professional learning on growth versus achievement, ongoing training for our staff to use the data to help drive instruction, time, space, and tools needed to interpret and use the data, and then action planning with teachers to meet those growth goals, how to deliver that instruction, what the kids with focus on the student needs. The next one is the development of the professional learning communities. Administration needs to model and use district language on this. School visits are being made to other schools in Lake County that are a little bit farther along on the continuum of PLCs. I mentioned the continuum. Over on the right is a diagram of a continuum, like a checkbox kind of a continuum of the progress towards fully functioning PLCs. Oh, we go back one more. Sorry. So the target is that all PLCs in our school will reach to stage 2 with progress towards stage 3 on the continuum. And we have some problem solving that we need to do because we have some staff members that are the only teacher that teaches art in the building or the only teacher that teaches Spanish in the building. So we want to find some professional dialogue for those staff members with people that teach like subjects. And then maximizing our resources through scheduling is an important part of this. It has a big impact on the PLC initiative. Creating the time for PLCs to meet in effort to enhance instruction with students. Looking at the structure of the schedule to enable content teams to meet regularly. Currently, our monthly or early release days are packed already with professional development initiatives on PLCs, on restorative practice, curriculum review, data dives, staff meetings, paraprofessional training, and more. So those early release days are being used heavily. And then our staff needs to establish a program on making those scheduling improvements that we do from year to year. This year already, we had a staff brainstorm session. We took and these were the things that were identified as important to us as a staff, as far as what the students need and what's going to engage them the most. We want to take a close look at the minutes per subject area. The teachers want the ability to meet the standards in each content area. So time is crucial to every content area. Increase support options for students. We want students that need the support to be able to get it in maybe more than one or two different ways or with different staff members. Increase student elective choices, making sure that things are engaging, hands-on, project-based, and that there's a variety of interests being represented. And then more classes with some real-life experiences and learning. And we also would like to extend the advisory time that we've already established in our school day to focus on some of those social emotional learning needs that students need. So at the end there, we just want to be able to do it all.
So just a couple of things we want to share with you, some pieces of data that we use to kind of help some of our brainstorming strategies. And again, it doesn't need to go into detail, but you know, a lot of our grade level teams, when they looked at data from last year, they looked at these type of reports and see, all right, what areas within math and within reading are strengths that instructionally versus where do we need to spend a little bit more time and attention within a specific area within those subject areas. So we've used a couple of those strategies within grade level teams. Also another report, we look at how can we group students together based on what skills they have versus what skills they don't have, and we can group kids together in differentiate instruction with some of these reports, which is great, and a lot of our teachers are utilizing that type of data to really break down, all right, let's spend some time with students that teach them skills that they don't know versus let's teach them skills that they already know. This is where the pre and post testing really comes in. So this is a great report that we use to differentiate. And then we also look at IAR data. And this is an example of an IAR report, and that's our state assessment that we do every year. And this represents a math assessment where the standards are all listed at the bottom. It goes from the most difficult questions all the way to the easiest questions. In those orange, green kind of shapes, I think from a distance, it all looks like a blob, but if you go up close, it's a triangle and a circle. That represents where our students at a particular grade level scored. And that blue trend line is where the state is. So we can see where our strengths when it comes to specific standards versus where do we need to spend a little bit more attention compared to others around the state. And so we've kind of talked about this at grade level team meetings. And really, we're kind of eye-opening discussions about, yes, depending on where we taught that skill, you're right. We did not spend a lot of time there, or we didn't get right to that topic because maybe that topic was after state testing. And so we're looking at pacing and how we can adjust pacing for that. So just examples of pieces of data that we use to brainstorm and action plan.
Remember, building connections, that's goal. That's the goal two, the second goal. We talked a lot about academics. We're going to shift into building connections. It's all about belonging. This is just a little excerpt about belonging and why it's important to feel connected to the place that you work, the people that you work with, the students that you teach, the school. It's important for parents to feel connected to the school, even though they're not here every day. So a little bit different to monitor this than academics. Academics is sort of easy to monitor when you have test data. It's a hard and concrete number. Broke, you made it, you know, achievement, you made it, you didn't, whatever. But monitoring this is a little bit different. So we're using surveys, we're using thought exchanges, we're using behavior data from PBIS and attendance. So here's the survey that was given to students in the beginning of the year. It was just a belonging survey, several questions across the top. And it was students would rate it as a 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then we put it together into a chart here or a table that would show how the kids were answering it. Blue is highly rated. Green is kind of middle rated, and yellow is obviously the lowest rating. Doesn't mean that it was like low, but definitely is lower than the other ones. I find it interesting that they say, I like coming to school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Those are my guys, right? So anecdotally, I can say that when I am outside seeing kids, they enjoy being at school. When I talked to some of our team leaders about that question in particular, we were kind of wondering if it was like a semantics, the way the question was worded. Maybe they don't like actually physically coming to school, but maybe they actually like being at school. That's what we were kind of hoping for. So we're gonna try and see if we can tease that out a little bit, but definitely some really wonderful things. I'd like to highlight the columns that are fully blue. You can see that there's an adult in the school who cares about me, highly rated. Teachers are kind to me, highly rated. So that was, really good information for us to have.
So these are examples of the questions and where students scored, in those grade levels. So although the average data was pretty good, we saw that in the blues and greens, we still know that there are students that scored 1s and 2s in some of the questions. That's why we circled them here, that we don't want to ignore that. So that first question, I feel safe at school. Well, we have close to 70 kids that rated that a 1 or a 2. So that's makes you think. I have friends at school. Again, 50 kids said that. They were 1 or 2 that possibly they don't have friends at school. There's an adult at school who cares about me, upper right. Just under 50, that rated that a 1 or a 2. I feel like I belong in my classroom. Over 70, rated that a 1 or a 2. So yes, lots of 3s and 4s, but we need to keep an eye on those 1s and 2s and ask those questions. Of what do we do to help support those students? And then the big one, I feel like I belong at Millburn, that sense of belonging. Well, we had just over 50. So as we look at some of those, we want to look at and reflect on these key questions. How do we create an environment that kids feel safe in? Classroom, hallways, buses. What can we do to help students build friendships for those students that identify that they do not have a key group of friends or friends within the building? And how can we assure every student is connected with, and they bring value to the learning environment? Things that we have to keep on asking ourselves each and every day.
And then this slide is just an example from one of the thought exchanges that was sent out to parents, trying to, gauge from parents, get feedback there saying, what's important to you at your school and what makes you feel good about what would make you feel like you're part of your school. So those are the 4 top ranked things. One of them is just about being greeted nicely when you come to the building. That's actually the first 2 is that just kind of being, greeted nicely when you enter the building. Another one is good connections with the kids' teachers, having that a 2-way communication strand. And then the last one there is just activities for kids to be involved in. So these are ongoing strategies at both buildings that we share, that we're working on. So there's many of them listed there: connection time, theme days, birthdays, restorative practices, PBIS, lots of things that are just happening on a regular basis highlighted in this slide.
And just on a personal note, one of the things that we have in common in both buildings is that daily connection time that's built into our school day. That's associated with our restorative practices, which I'm sure you've heard in previous board discussions, and the amount of time we put into training our staff with restorative practices. But in those daily times that our classes are together, today I was able to go into a classroom, and although I was facilitating it, it was just nice to see that this is built into our school culture. So very beginning, they have a circle. Here we're on a Monday, come back from the weekend. It was a very simple question, but what would you do to improve on your weekend? And just watching this group of students and just seeing, they have the procedures in place and they're each taking turns of thanking each other, but they're saying each other by name and they're really listening. That's the thing, belonging, that sense of listening, and sit back, not just as a principal, but see these kids really feel like they belong, that they're a family. I really was like, wow. And this is what's going on across the district, is that this is what's going, that time, that daily 20-25 minute time is very important. And I was able to see it today, that are we in that step in the right direction? So we're hoping that trend continues and that we start looking at that baseline data, get higher, and hopefully that daily connection with those kids that were scoring 1s and 2s, they feel a little bit more connected, a little bit more belonging classroom, that's in the district we're going, so. Thanks. Question?
I have a question, and it's, we just approved the calendar, so. But it sounds like you guys need more time, because it says currently monthly, wait. I got it shrunk down. Basically, you said currently monthly early release days are packed with PD initiatives and all the different things you're doing. I know it, you can't create time, so how can we create time for you? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I guess again, we
Yeah.
already did the calendar, so more early release dates is probably off the table, but you have anything that you wish the board would do to create more time? I mean, you can't create more time, so how
Can't
could we
create time, right,
provide
yes.
more space,
Right.
more?
So when we look at scheduling, because I highlighted that's a big thing in the middle school is periods and classes and how many minutes and, you know, what, how the kids are gonna move from class to class. So one of the things that comes out of that is usually like a lot of cost and benefit. There could be a cost in trying to add something that means take away from somebody in order to get a benefit that you're looking for. So you have to just kind of evaluate those costs and benefits when they come up, as they come up. And then get to the point where you can live with the cost because the benefits are mutually agreed upon by the majority of staff, that that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Would you want more early release days, or does staff think that would be too hectic?
I definitely think that that's a possibility.
Definitely.
I think, you know, I think you saw something very key in there, and just that our early dismissals right now are busy.
Yeah,
They're, and it's, sometimes it feels like a little bit rushed because we're trying to do so many things in that amount of time. And recently this year, we've done some things that are district groupings called families that we've created throughout the building, the two buildings, where they come together for some of that early dismissal time. And that because the both buildings function on a different time schedule, because one building starts before the other one does, we also have a hard time trying to get that time to line up perfectly with both staffs and bus drivers who are finishing their routes. So,
yeah,
And just to kind of share our perspective of the time that it took for us to develop those proficiency scales, and even what we're doing right now with home
Yeah.
assessments, it's taking teachers out of the classroom. And it's using a whole day. Luckily we have daily team time, but that's just not enough. And we need a solid piece of time of working on those. And so over the last now year and a half, and we're gonna be going on 2 years, we've been setting aside days for members of each team to go in and work on those assessments. So there's a pro and con side to that, yep, we're now pulling kids from the classroom and the money and the stuff and things like that, but that's what we needed to take.
that's your creative solution to making time. Yeah.
I have a comment about that. It sounds like you do have common planning periods. Okay, yeah, that's like key with PLCs, and then we kind of roll that one.
One of the things that's I can find in the challenge with that though, is that it's for a grade level.
Yeah.
And so I have 3 social studies teachers that all have different plan times. I can't get the 3 it's challenging to get the 3 social studies teachers together to really talk about that content because everything is so much grade level focused right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the assessments, do you guys create those? Is your curriculum like purchased? Is it worked on by teachers? Is it a
So-
combo?
A combination of both. So right now, because we've developed those learning targets, not a lot of our assessments perfectly align with those. So we're really taking those proficiencies together, what we want kids to know and deciding our new common assessments.
Yeah.
Yes, before it was use my math assessment at the end of chapter 1 or this reading assessment, but now we want these learning targets to be the center of everything.
They'll be
And so
key
now these are
specifically.
really authentic, teacher-made assessments. that we make.
Awesome.
You had mentioned, that there's 70 students that don't feel safe at school. And this is probably a big topic, but do you have a feel for why that is at this point? In general, maybe, and again, this could be a big discussion, but I mean, just.
Well, when was that survey given
It
to?
was in the beginning of this year. And it was 3rd through 8th graders.
Yeah, we're still collecting that on our kindergarten through first grade. But, I mean, that's one of those things that even Jake and I were reflecting is that, you know, this is the first time we kind of sent a survey like that. How can we get more info about that? You know, because it was just that one question. Is there a way that we can, because this is all through Google form that we designed and created, that, is there a way that if they answer a specific question, will that take it to another one so we can get more detail?
Well, yeah, I would think that would certainly be something that the board would like to hear about, that the kids should not feel unsafe inside the school, so.
Which that's why it's important that we wanted to share with you that, yeah, majority might be okay, but there's still that small group. What's going on with that?
Yeah, 70. And then one other question, the presentation mentions SOFA compliance, what is it?
I don't know.
Student online.
So I don't know what acronym stands for.
SOPA, SOPA is a Student Online Protection, Privacy Protection Act. So
Okay, so it's privacy. Okay.
yeah, it's protecting student privacy, so, we have to have, they're called NDAs or something, non-disclosure agreements
Yeah.
with every app that we use. We haven't done it yet with all of our apps, because we have 400, whatever apps, so we're gonna have to narrow that down and get going on that.
All right, thanks.
Yes, that's what it is.
No,
So there's certain requirements that we have. Okay. That we are trying to meet, and we are not there yet.
You guys have any further questions? Reach out to us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was based on school funds.
Yeah, got it. Ask that question. Everybody else get that?
Mr. Pink, Mr. Blue.
I was waiting for Darth Vader to pop up somewhere on the clothes. Figure that might be
I
a
got struck.
dead giveaway.
Board policy up to future agenda items, board policies, MLK breakfast. Review of closed session minutes, etc. Superintendent.
Okay, so on my superintendent report, I'll talk about the Martin Luther King breakfast.
All right.
What's that?
Oh, good.
So Brian and I have been talking about it. We're a committee of 2 at this point, so if anybody else would like to join our committee, you're more than welcome, but Veronica has some great ideas about what we can do to make this a great event and build on what we did last time. We haven't had it since COVID started because it's been kind of an issue to get people together. But the last time we had that event, we had it before school. I think we started, we're trying to remember what we started at 7 o'clock, brought in parents and kids for a breakfast. We had a video of all the activities that the kids were doing the week. Before we put together a video, I think Anne Marie actually put together that video, and
The choir thing,
the choir sang, yep.
and then we all
They
sang.
prepared a song, then we sang, and we went on with our day. We really needed that, and much appreciated. So we'd like to do that again. We're looking at different dates. We thought about the possibility, so we'll get some feedback on this, of doing it on Martin Luther King Day, which would be January 16th. We could do it. We're thinking either the Friday morning before school, or the day of the holiday, or that next Friday.
Yeah, I get that day off. The 19th?
16th.
16.
Yeah, that would be the advantage, is a lot of people would have that day off. It's not
Yeah,
quite as
they could
much
come and
before
participate.
school, we could have a little bit more of a casual, laid back. Event. So,
16th, yeah, I get that day off. I can do the 16th.
You want board volunteer to help out, or you just looking for general volunteers?
I think last year I think we had a meeting where you did the footsteps and stuff, so if you were to have a meeting, I'd like to come again.
Okay.
Last year was awesome, even though we didn't have the breakfast, the activities were awesome. A lot going on.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to incorporate the other activities that the middle school doing, and elementary surrounding that week, so.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you. Board report.
I went to the CEDAW board meeting last week. They're actually having some better luck with staffing, which is good to hear. They have some bigger budget choices coming up with some facility situations, so some big decisions for them to make. One of the big concerns that struck me was, there was an increase in the need for physical restraint and timeout. And just the effect that was having on the mental health of the staff. Because that's not anything a staff member wants to do, they want to see their students be successful. So that just, they also did like a climate survey as well, just to kind of see, where their staff needed support, but I just think that whole district has got to just be, I don't know, just it was on my heart that, yeah, that's really got to be draining for them, so. But it sounds like that's something that they see and are like, okay, what do we do? How do we react to this? And that was good to see that they were like, now that we have this data and we see this trend, it wasn't like, stop with the restraints. I mean, I'm sure they want to support, but it was also like, well, how can we support the teachers? So that felt, that was good. And, that was not pretty much it, but that's what the highlights.
Anyone else? I skipped over our business report.
One little, that our biannual inspection, the kitchen hood, fire extinguishers, fire alarms were conducted last year.
And
They're working.
Everything is.
That's it.
They sent them off when they're working.
Oh, we did, yeah, that did happen.
We got a 10-minute extra recess, so.
Oh, I saw.
Not cool at all.
Saw that notice.
Yeah, it's-
All right,
Well, I'd like to thank the principals for putting the school improvement plan together and the teachers for coming. I appreciate seeing them in the audience tonight and the hard work that was done to get that work together. They've been working hard on standards-based report cards at the elementary for a long time, but I think it'll be, well, I know it'll be worth it when it's done. And with PLCs, it's a hard, different setup and a different way of thinking, a little bit different way of thinking, more structured, but I appreciate the staff and the that they can do it for all of that. So I just want to make sure, and that's it.
we have a motion to adjourn. I'll make a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, wait.
Got this.
Oh, yeah.
We're on the, consent agenda, right?
Was that consent agenda?
Yes.
Oh, then we are good. Never mind.
You can take your check.
My annual salary.